right now, local dealerships are selling over 150,000 cars every single month that are more than a decade old and cost less than $10,000.
It's just wild.
It really is. It is a desperate scramble for inventory at the absolute bottom of the market. So, welcome to Auto News Talk.
Glad to be here.
You know, when you look at the automotive industry from the outside, you usually just see the sleek commercials, right?
Yeah, the marketing.
Exactly. The futuristic electric vehicles just gliding silently down these empty coastal highways.
Which is rarely the reality.
Right. But if you actually look under the hood of the industry itself, you realize automakers and dealers are trying desperately to fund this high-tech, electrified future. But they are completely dependent on their traditional, old-school profit engines to actually pay for it.
It is a massive, incredibly complicated transition.
Yeah.
And to understand what's actually happening to the cars you buy and drive, we have to look past that marketing. So here's the terrain we're walking through for this segment.
Okay, lay it out for us.
We are looking at what consumers are actually buying on the lot, how local dealers are surviving an intense margin squeeze, the existential labor battles erupting inside legacy automakers, and the massive geopolitical supply chain shifts just hovering over all of it.
It is a lot to unpack. So let's start right on the dealership lot. What are you, the consumer, actually putting your money toward?
Right.
Because when we look at the mid-year U.S. sales leaders data, the picture it paints is very different from those futuristic EV commercials.
The central insight from that mid-year sales report is that traditional high-volume segments remain the absolute backbone of the market.
While electric vehicle and hybrid adoption is, well, it's wildly uneven.
Exactly. We're still a market defined by practical utility and internal combustion engines.
The numbers are just staggering when you lay them out. Like, the report highlights the GMC Sierra sitting comfortably at number 6 overall.
Right, with over 167,000 sales.
Which is massive. And then you have the Toyota Tacoma at number 9.
Yeah, that one is up 10% and just completely dominating the midsize pickup market.
Right. These are heavy, gas-powered trucks carrying the financial weight of the entire industry.
And even when a traditional heavy hitter stumbles, the volume is still massive. The mid-year sales data puts the Toyota RAV4 at number 8 with nearly 154,000 sales.
Wow.
And that is even with a 36% drop.
Which is an important drop to explain, I think, because they didn't lose 36% of their buyers due to a lack of interest, right?
Correct. The report notes Toyota is transitioning production to a new generation for the RAV4.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when an automaker retools a factory for a new model, they literally have to stop the line. That creates a massive supply vacuum, driving up prices for whatever's left on the lot.
But the underlying demand for that practical utility vehicle is still rock solid.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, some of the highly publicized EV pushes are hitting an absolute brick wall. Here is a detail that really stuck out to me from that mid-year sales report.
Okay.
Ford's e-Transit sales plummeted a staggering 88%.
That is a fascinating metric because the e-Transit is a commercial vehicle,
Right.
Fleet buyers operate strictly on spreadsheets. If the charging infrastructure isn't there to support their delivery routes, or if the battery weight severely cuts into the payload they can carry,
They just aren't going to buy it.
no matter how much the industry wants them to transition, yeah.
And even when you look at hybrids, which are often pitched as the perfect middle ground for hesitant buyers, the results are completely split.
They really are. The mid-year data shows the Corolla hybrid declining, but on the flip side, the Kia Sportage hybrid surged 133%.
And that is exactly where I get stuck. I'm looking at these hybrid numbers, and the mid-year data leaves a massive blind spot.
How so?
Well, what it doesn't answer is why buyers are running from a proven nameplate, like the Corolla hybrid, but flocking to the Sportage hybrid in droves.
Right.
Is it styling? Is it dealership incentives? The numbers give us the cold, hard facts, but completely miss the underlying consumer psychology driving those specific choices.
Yeah, to get closer to that psychology, you really have to look at the overarching affordability crisis.
Which is huge right now.
It is. If you pull up the Dealer Weekly Briefing Archive, you see a completely different layer to this story.
What's their main takeaway?
Their central insight is that while top-line industry sales might look strong on paper, they are actually masking an underlying weakness in retail demand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're seeing a market where used car prices have structurally reset at a much higher baseline.
Which brings us back to that wild statistic I mentioned off the top of the show. There is massive, desperate demand at the absolute bottom of the market.
There really is.
The Weekly Dealer Archive notes that dealerships are moving more than 150,000 vehicles priced under $10,000 every single month.
And the vast majority of those are 7 to 15 years old.
It's crazy. Affordability is clearly the central friction point for consumers right now. Interest rates are punishing, and new car prices have skyrocketed.
So consumers are holding on to older cars longer, or actively seeking them out, just to secure basic transportation that doesn't completely break their monthly budget.
It feels like we're operating in a barbell economy for cars right now.
A barbell economy.
Yeah, like on one end of the barbell, you have massive volume and investment in luxury, high-end EVs for early adopters with deep pockets.
Okay, I track.
And on the other end, you have this frantic scramble for 10-year-old sub-$10,000 sedans.
Right.
And the traditional affordable new car for the average family is just hollowed out.
I see where you're going with that analogy, but we have to take that 150,000 figure with a grain of salt, too.
Why is that?
Well, one major limitation is the Weekly Archive completely omits any methodology for how they calculated that exact sub-$10,000 number.
Oh, so we don't know the source of the data.
Right. Is that franchise dealers only? Does it include independent lots? We just don't know. But the macro trend is undeniably accurate, and it puts local dealerships in a very difficult position.
So if the middle of the market is hollowing out and buyers are fighting over scraps at the bottom, how are local dealerships actually keeping their doors open and protecting their margins?
They are consolidating.
Yeah.
And they are optimizing every single square inch of their property. Right. According to the Auto Retail Daily Briefing, the retail sector is trying to balance improving vehicle availability on their lots with incredibly intense pricing pressure from consumers.
And that pressure is forcing a massive wave of buy-sells and operational shifts.
Exactly. We are seeing rapid dealership consolidation. The Daily Briefing points out groups like Cardinal Automotive Group acquiring 2 California stores.
Yeah, and you have Ed Morse Automotive adding a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Montana.
And their leadership explicitly stated their goal is to become a group that sells everything.
They want scale. They want brand diversity to insulate themselves from these market shocks.
If the EV market softens, they want a heavy-duty truck brand in their portfolio to balance it out.
And you can literally see the financial caution in the market just by looking at the cars parked on the lot.
Oh, this is a great point.
Yeah, that same Daily Retail Briefing cites a study showing 80% of vehicles on the market are now grayscale. 80%.
It is the ultimate indicator of financial anxiety.
Really? How so?
Well, dealerships don't want to stock a bright green car because it limits their buyer pool, and they need high turnover.
Right.
And the consumer doesn't want the green car because they are already worrying about the resale value 5 years down the line. Everyone is playing it incredibly safe. Black, white, silver, gray.
Plus, dealers are still bogged down with massive logistical headaches that tie up their inventory.
Yeah, but recalls.
The briefing notes there are still nearly 5 million unrepaired vehicles out there with Takata airbag recalls.
Which means dealerships have to squeeze efficiency and profit out of every single functioning department.
They don't have a choice.
Exactly. There's a great quote in the Daily Retail Briefing from Nicholas Velez, the internet director at Valley Kia.
What do you say?
He was talking about the grueling process of rebuilding his department and getting the right people in the right roles. He noted, now this total happiness runs through the dealership, and I think that has pushed us through our record last month.
It's all about operational perfection. But there is a massive hole in the Daily Retail Briefing's logic when it comes to long-term revenue, I think.
What's that?
Well, what the briefing doesn't answer is how dealers plan to permanently offset the revenue lost to the rising trend of do-it-yourself auto maintenance gaining traction among consumers.
Yeah.
If buyers can't afford a new car, they certainly might not be able to afford a dealership's labor rates. How are dealers planning to survive consumers who are just fixing their own cars in their driveways?
That is exactly why dealerships are fighting tooth and nail for control of the service lane.
Right.
If we look back at the Dealer Weekly Briefing, it shows dealers leaning incredibly hard into fixed operations, which is the industry term for parts and service.
Got it.
For many dealers, the service lane is the only thing keeping the business afloat.
The Weekly Dealer Archive highlighted a fascinating tactic. Bob Rorman Toyota is utilizing a highly targeted $50 oil change strategy.
Which is wild.
Right, because you and I both know a dealership does not make a profit on a $50 oil change.
Not a chance. They lose money on that.
Right. They do it purely to drive vital traffic into those service lanes.
Exactly. Once your car is on the lift, Their technicians can inspect the brakes, check the tires, and find the real margin-generating work.
So are dealerships basically operating on the razor and razor blade model at this point? Like, is the physical car just the handle sold at a break-even price and the service lane is the blade where they actually make their money?
For a growing number of dealerships, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And because service and physical inventory are so critical to survival right now, tensions between dealers and the automakers supplying them are just boiling over.
It's getting hostile.
Very. The Weekly Archive documents an absolute explosion of legal disputes. You have a New York dealer launching a $15 million lawsuit against General Motors.
Jeez.
And you have Hyundai managers openly alleging that the automaker is actively withholding inventory and lowering bonuses.
So dealers are surviving by leaning heavily on parts, service, and aggressive legal pushback. But where does that leave the manufacturers? If consumers are holding on to older cars or fighting over margins, the factories building those new cars are suddenly burning cash they don't have.
Which brings us to the factory floor. Automakers are completely on the defensive.
Yeah.
We could see this playing out vividly in Europe right now. If we look at the Volkswagen cost cuts report, the central insight is that legacy European automakers are utterly trapped.
Trapped between what?
They are caught between the urgent mathematical need to slash costs to survive the EV transition and the intense political and labor realities of their home countries.
The stakes are astronomical for them.
They are.
The report details that 40,000 jobs are currently at stake across key German plants, including Zwickau, Emden, Hanover, and Neckarsulm.
And Volkswagen is bleeding ground globally, particularly in China.
Right, where they are getting battered by domestic EV makers like BYD and XPeng, who operate with vastly lower overhead.
And you can see how tense this dynamic has become at the corporate level. Volkswagen CEO Oliver Blume is facing massive backlash over his restructuring proposals.
It's a huge fight.
It is. The VW report details a dramatic moment where the supervisory board outright rejected Blume's proposal in a 12-7 vote.
That is wild to see at an executive level. Just a flat rejection.
You have to remember the context of European governance, though. In Germany, labor representatives aren't just a union you negotiate with across a table.
Right.
They literally sit on the supervisory board alongside government officials. They have a direct binding vote in corporate strategy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you simply cannot just shutter an inefficient plant to save money without triggering a massive, highly publicized conflict.
So Blume is backtracking. He's vaguely promising that Volkswagen has smarter solutions rather than resorting to outright factory closures.
Right.
But, what that reporting completely fails to answer is what those smarter solutions actually entail.
Exactly. It's totally vague.
If shutting down inefficient factories is completely off the table, where does the cost savings come from? Can a legacy automaker really trim the fat to compete with lean, agile startups without eventually cutting into the bone?
You say cutting into the bone, but for these legacy brands, the labor force is the bone.
Oh, that's a good point.
It is foundational to their identity and their political standing. The transition to electric is not just an engineering problem, it is a social and political minefield.
Right.
And just when you think the pressure on these automakers couldn't get any higher, the very foundation of how they source parts and assemble vehicles is shifting underneath them.
Right, the geopolitical supply chain threat. Automakers are already struggling to cut costs, but now the rules of international trade are being rewritten.
Quickly.
This is where the USMCA review analysis comes in.
The USMCA replaced NAFTA. And the central insight of this analysis is that the open-ended review process of the agreement is directly threatening the deeply integrated, highly regionalized North American auto supply chain.
Because the U.S. declined to automatically renew the agreement, right?
Exactly, which triggers a series of annual reviews stretching all the way through 2036.
The numbers attached to this policy limbo are staggering. The supply chain analysis points out that an estimated $200 billion in North American auto investment made just between 2020 and 2025 is sitting directly in the crosshairs.
Because the modern auto supply chain is so intertwined,
Yeah.
Parts cross the borders of Mexico, the U.S., and Canada multiple times before a car is fully assembled.
Yeah.
And the U.S. administration is pushing to aggressively tighten those rules.
Yeah.
The USMCA supply chain analysis highlights a push to raise the regional value content requirement to an incredibly steep 82%.
And it gets even more restrictive than that, doesn't it?
It does. It's coupled with a mandate that 50% of the value must come entirely from the United States.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, If a single major component, like a battery pack, relies on imported critical minerals, an automaker instantly fails that threshold.
And failing means what?
Failing means getting hit with massive tariffs, wiping out your profit margin on a vehicle that is already expensive to build.
This sounds like a bakery that spent billions of dollars building a massive facility to bake a very specific type of cake.
Okay, I like this.
And halfway through construction, the government completely changes the recipe and dictates exactly which specific farm the flour has to come from. You can't just flip a switch and reorganize a physical global manufacturing network.
That bakery metaphor is spot on. But imagine if the flour was also controlled by your biggest geopolitical rival.
Oh, right, China.
Exactly. A huge driver of this policy shift is China. The analysis notes rising concerns over Chinese auto exports making their way into the U.S. through Mexico, and China's overall dominance in processing the critical battery materials needed for EVs.
So policymakers are basically trying to build a fortress around North American manufacturing.
They are.
But the ultimate implication here is that these massive international policy shifts are going to trickle right down to that local dealership lot we started on.
Absolutely.
You're going to see disrupted vehicle availability and even higher sticker prices for consumers as automakers pass those supply chain costs along.
Someone has to pay for it.
Exactly. Now, the analysis throws out things like digital compliance systems to help manage these new sourcing rules.
Right, software solutions.
But honestly, what this analysis doesn't answer is how software and digital tracking can realistically solve the massive physical supply chain bottlenecks these OEMs are going to face, trying to source local materials that might not even exist yet in sufficient quantities.
Right. Software can't mine lithium.
Exactly.
It is a perfect storm of physical and financial challenges. If we step back and synthesize everything we've unpacked across these documents, three major themes really define the automotive landscape right now.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, we have the margin squeeze. From the local dealership to the massive legacy automaker, everyone is trying to extract more profit from tightening margins.
Right. We see this supported by the daily briefings data on rapid dealership consolidation.
Yeah, and we see it playing out dramatically in the Volkswagen report as they desperately search for cost cuts without triggering labor strikes.
So what's the second theme?
The second theme is the pragmatic consumer. Buyers are flat out rejecting high-priced technological experiments in favor of pure utility and affordability.
The mid-year sales report definitely proves this, with traditional gas-powered trucks dominating the top spots.
Yep. And the weekly briefing backs it up with that incredible data point about the insatiable demand for sub-$10,000 used cars.
And the third theme?
Geopolitical vulnerability. The entire industry's pricing and physical inventory are being held hostage by international trade agreements and global competition,
which we see in the USMCA analysis outlining the existential threat to North American supply chains.
And the VW report shows how intense Chinese competition is forcing legacy brands into corners they don't know how to fight their way out of.
When you lay all of that out, it exposes two massive contradictions driving the industry right now.
Yeah.
The first tension is this battle between macro ambition and micro reality. Well, automakers are being heavily pushed by regulators and their own marketing departments toward a high-tech EV future. But the actual data from the mid-year sales report shows that consumers are largely keeping the lights on by buying traditional gas trucks.
Right.
And the weekly briefing shows they are hunting for affordable 10-year-old used cars. The ambition of the boardroom just does not match the reality of the consumer's wallet.
That is incredibly true. And the second tension is dealer independence versus OEM control.
Right.
Dealerships want the independents to grow, consolidate, and sell everything to insulate themselves, as we saw in the daily briefing.
But automakers want stricter control over pricing and inventory to manage their own margins.
Exactly, which is leading directly to the explosion of lawsuits and withheld inventory disputes documented in the weekly briefing.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? What is the practical takeaway from all of this complexity?
It's all about the service lane.
Exactly. The immediate reality is that the dealership service lane is the true north of the auto industry right now, with new vehicle production caught in geopolitical trade limbo and EVs struggling to find solid footing with mainstream buyers.
Keeping existing cars on the road is the safest, most reliable bet for both the consumer trying to save money and the dealer trying to keep their doors open.
It all comes back to preservation, maintaining the reliable machines we already have while the industry figures out how to practically and profitably build the future.
Well said.
Which leaves us with a fascinating question to ponder.
Okay.
As modern cars become increasingly sophisticated, essentially acting as giant rolling computers, and as geopolitical trade wars threaten the software and semiconductor supply chains required to build them, will the basic 15-year-old used car suddenly transition from a budget necessity into a premium asset simply because it is a mechanical machine that is simple enough to fix without a laptop?
That is a wild thought.
Keep an eye on how these shifting trade policies impact the sticker prices at your local lots. Thank you for listening to Auto News Talk.